Gentlemen, welcome. Welcome to this panel, the Network and Data Center. You notice something, the word center is spelt correctly, because I saw this slide. Those Americans, eh? Okay, so this is all about network and data center. You know, one thing that I keep thinking about is increasingly data is moving into the cloud, and customers talk about shifting, applications and, their workflow into the cloud. But, the thing that you have to bear in mind is often the first thing they say is, hey, our network needs upgrading, our network needs changing. How are you responding to the cloud, the opportunity the cloud brings, the change that cloud brings? How are you responding to it in terms of innovation? Ali, let's start with you.
I think, as previously mentioned, data is actually the fundamental, I should say, the fixed line connectivity. I know the modern day corporations are evolving and they're adopting cloud services, i.e. software as a services, and it could be from anything from application layer 7 to any application-based services, which cloud specialists who have been talking in the previous panels as well. Now, all these clever services are sitting in the cloud, but the accessibility to be able to use those services and get all of those feature-rich products and have the full user experience, if your underlying network infrastructure is not up to scratch, then that means you would not have the experience that the vendor would like you to have. And therefore, I think the network layer is paramount to every discussion that you're going to be having.
Yeah, I like it. Good response. Lane, how do sales partners ask the right questions to make sure that they're addressing the issues Ali just spoke about?
Well, it's all about the adoption of the cloud from the client perspective. In fact, Randall Stevenson from AT&T yesterday announced at the Goldman Sachs conference that everyone thought commoditization of the network would happen because of cloud application and acceptance. Quite on the contrary, the network is now becoming much, much more valuable to the cloud than the cloud is to the network application. So as we see more and more people take 10 out of their own storage and put it in a public data center, that then allows, whether it's through GTT or whomever, to interconnect basically a global WAN to any network application, any cloud application by a simple VLAN connection or a cross connection a world apart, it becomes a very compelling value proposition for the clients to say, ooh, how do I do that? How do I transition? What data center do I use? How do I get there? Do I do a private, public, hybrid? And being able to have those conversations with your clients and have a wide variety of people to show as experts is powerful when you're sitting down and talking to your clients.
Nice. Bryn, how do you respond that from a distance perspective? You guys cover North America, Europe. How do you ensure that when a customer's looking from a network perspective, they achieve optimal experience in the cloud, regardless of where their locations are?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things with this as well. I agree with both of you guys. The network now is very key to this. The commoditization that everybody was predicting hasn't really happened. But I think the bit that people lose sight of is the user experience. So the big thing for us is actually to stop talking about technology, acknowledge the fact that you're going to procure a network of some description, and let's think about the user experience and how does the user interact with that data. Because, cloud's been around forever. It's just a mainframe. It's the ability to remotely go and access some data somewhere else. So the first point is, let's look at the users. Where do you want to get to? Look for a provider that gets you as close to your user and your data store as possible. So that's point number one. And point number two is have a plan B. I've never met a customer that can actually move everything to the cloud. I've sat in lots of forums, lots of briefings where they said cloud first, cloud first, cloud first. But again, I've yet to sit in a business that says, I deliver everything over the cloud. And the cloud's a beautiful thing, but it's having a plan B. So it's also having a network that can flex between both public and private environments. I think it's very key to give that level of insurance moving forward.
Nice. And that raises another question. We reckon that our customers are using more than one cloud. I think the average is 3 clouds for their organizational use. So there's resilience there, right? They're not dependent on one cloud provider. How do we ensure that we provide resilience from a network perspective? James?
Well, it's interesting, actually. So whether it's 3 clouds or 2 clouds or they're doing a physical and a fully virtual environment, coming back to what we keep saying is the network is the key. The resiliency is listening to the customer and going on that journey with them. And one of the important things about this channel is it's a sell with model. So of course we go with the partner and listen to what the customers wants rather than the traditional model of telling them what they want. Actually, some of the meetings I've been involved with some of the digital companies that are coming on, one of which probably everyone from the UK in this room has an app on their iPhones. Or other mobile devices. Actually, they're fully adopting the cloud, and they're just going straight in. But one of the things that's key, and we're working with one major cloud partner at the moment, is if you do not address the cloud, the experience will be what everybody, the sort of naysayers say, it won't be good. If you look at that journey, then the adoption and the transformation is very, very quick. And it's all about listening to the customer. You can't sell it on your own. You need, and just say, buy the cloud like you can Dropbox. You need to go in and listen to the customer and see what they're using it for, the applications, etc.
I do so like that. You mentioned talking to the customer. You mentioned sitting alongside the sales partner, right? So, what we've got to remember is we've got some very clever people in this room from a sales partner perspective. They're maybe skilled in MPLS. They might be skilled in voice. Yeah, but when they're sitting in front of a customer and they're talking about network, they've got to ask some key questions. What sort of questions do they need to ask? And at what point do they say, you know what, I'm not the expert. I don't profess to be the expert. I can bring the expert in, right? So we're going to bring the expert. Tony, at what point and what questions do they ask and get you guys in?
Well, we see customers asking questions around how will this shift in technology towards software definition and cloud improve my business performance? How will it make my company, being the customer, how will it make us more agile? And how can you help us? So the way Telstra helps is through our innovation and investment. So we've invested in a cloud gateway product that has direct connections into Azure, AWS, and SoftLayer. Right? So your customers and our sales model is basically a single sales model. So you could bring customers in and work with our account managers hand in hand in perfect harmony to deliver a cloud gateway that gives customers direct access to Azure, AWS, and SoftLayer, for example. We also have invested in the cloud management platform. So that cloud management platform gives customers transparency to all of their cloud activity. So you can kind of see and manage this shadow IT. So no matter who in your customer's organization signs up to a cloud provider, our cloud management gateway, our cloud management platform provides analytics, control, and management over all cloud activity. You combine those two, I get flexibility to burst into any cloud as well as overall management. And that's a real business proposition for our customers, because then they can actually experience the benefits of it, get out of the business of managing their data centers and get out of the business of managing networks through true cloud applications, and then get into the business of focusing on their core business and becoming more agile.
Nice, thank you. You mentioned two words, Azure, and you mentioned Amazon Web Services. That's 4 words. But I guess the thing that customers then are going to ask, they're going to go, to use Andrew's point earlier, they're out there, right? So customers are concerned about data sovereignty. So they're going to be saying, so if my data is in the cloud, where is it? Some customers are governed by bodies that determine what they can and can't do. Andrew, tell us about, from a colo perspective, the sort of things that sales partners should be asking their customers.
So it's quite simple, really. You put a piece of paper down, you divide it into 4, and you do people, locations, clouds, and data. And you explore these areas with the customer. What are your challenges with people? Is it a highly federated workforce? Locations, are you all in London? Or, are you in Manchester and Edinburgh? Or are you further than that afield? And what seems to happen here is that you can build a journey for your customer that says, I see where you need to be going. So when it comes to, okay, I've made a conscious decision to use Office 365, or one of the 500 plus cloud providers we've got in our data centers, you can say, great, I can do that in all of these locations with that same user experience anytime under one contract with Intelisys.
No, I like that key. That's really key. But again, turning to this thing about sovereignty, the big issue, the big elephant in the room right now is Brexit, right? So customers are concerned about, what does that mean to me? So, from a European perspective, from Brexit perspective, James, what should we be talking to customers about? What should our sales partners be talking to customers about and preparing them for change and uncertainty, where we can potentially win with them?
Well, I think the one thing that we're all very lucky with is IP has no geographical boundary, and most of the people up here are operating in multiple continents, multiple countries, and actually we've weathered these storms before. I mean, we haven't personally seen the direct effects of this yet, but those conversations are going on. Where my data sits is very, very key. What is my network going to do, and how is it going to operate into other networks that I might want to move into, or other countries I want to move into? I mean, we're seeing a big move to Asia, and we're seeing Asia in a big move to here, but we traditionally follow the financial markets like a lot of us have done in the past. I think the thing to do, and I've reiterated it before, is I don't believe you should always go in and talk about product, but you should go in and listen to what the customer has to say before you launch into, oh, I've got this great product for you, or you should adopt the cloud. I think it's important. Similarly to Telstra, we've got connections into every cloud provider. We offer the choice, but we don't go in with that. We go in trying to find out what they're doing with their data. And Brexit would be exactly the same way. How does it affect them? Do they have offices abroad? What is their plan before even getting to the network layer? You have to have your listening ears on.
Yeah, and that's absolutely true. But Bryn, if they were to say to you, yeah, all of that is true, and I hear what you say, but I need to be safe. I want to ensure that my data is located in my domain, in my country, in the UK. Can you do that? How would you do that? How would you ensure that?
I think that's, this comes with the adoption of cloud. There's always a compromise. You've got this blend of being able to create a hybrid model. So being able to work with partners like Equinix, AWS, Azure, and you can look at categorizing your data and where it needs to resolve. But fundamentally, as mentioned, the internet doesn't understand borders. Your data doesn't understand borders. And when you start looking at cloud, you have that compromise. So again, when you sat with a customer, start having that dialogue and understand what's actually important to them. Because a lot of it's just knee-jerk reaction. Some of it is important. Some bits around HIPAA, PCI, for instance, are very important to their organization. And you can begin to augment their world. But again, this goes back to the network. Make sure they're talking about having a discussion around an infrastructure that can support that can allow for that level of flexibility. And again, that's the key objective. You're going back to the user, the data, and the interlink between those three.
I like that. And I guess I just want to get on to this topic of making sure that the opportunity that our sales partners bring to you is right for you. You got 5 network providers here, and a colo provider that connects to the network is an important part of the network. What sort of questions do the sales partners need to be asking these customers to make sure that when they come to me, I can make sure that I can say, right, that could be good for Colt, that could be good for Level 3, that could be good for Veoneer. And what is the next step? What is the next step to getting you guys involved and helping them with their opportunity? Ali.
I think modern day digital strategies and CDOs of modern day corporations today, they are actually quite aware of the fact that homing data in the correct locations is no longer within the bounds of an enterprise or a corporation. So therefore, they are solely living on the mercy of the cloud operator itself. So in the same equation, the kind of questions our agents or resellers or perhaps the customer's strategy wing should be aiming at is what sort of technology prerequisites does my cloud require? So prerequisites is the fundamental question. 2, the commercial barrier, and 3rd would be the service delivery barriers, because don't forget the challenges that we historically have been having in the UK and Europe alone is we've been on the mercy of these tier 1 carriers who have been twice as latent in delivery as the OpenReach. So for example, OpenReach's lead time would be 30 to 35 working days. A typical lead time from the second best carrier in the UK was 75 as per recorded in May 2016. So clearly you know that the latency is of almost double the amount of lead time. So these type of questions, roadmaps, delivery roadmaps, and the carriers when they're choosing, or the vendors when they're choosing, these type of discussions must be included as part of the digital strategies.
That is very, very true. But so a lot of our sales partners are going to be sitting in front of the customer, and the customers say, I like the idea of this, right? But I've been using BT for the last 45 years. Why? Because I know they're safe. They annoy me. The account manager changes every 5 minutes. They're expensive, but I know they're safe. It's not going to go wrong. But, the opportunity, they don't know what they don't know, right? So they might not have heard of GTT. They might not have heard of Telstra. They might not have heard of Veoneer. how do the sales partners make sure that they get you into the conversation and that they come away with a positive effect, that the customer says, okay, I want to speak to them? Lane.
Well, we find the best acceptance we get from clients is when they're already going to have to make a technology change. They're moving from maybe it's a TDM environment or a MPLS environment, and they want to move to a more of a managed services environment, or they're adopting a pure cloud strategy or even a hybrid cloud strategy. When those conversations start, it's very simple, at least from a GTT perspective. If it's a technology change, they should be talking to us. If it's a multi-location, multi-application company, that's a great place for GTT to be introduced. If it's a single location, 1 or 2 locations, we're not your best solution. We're not. There's other guys here who are much better than that. Multi-location, people going into a technology change, this is where we can make a material difference. And again, being the unknown brand from a sales partner perspective, we're something new, something fresh, and then putting something different in front of clients. They want to know about it. It's a different age. It's a different technology going on today. There's a migration, and you want to do that with someone new and fresh.
I like that. Tony, why Telstra?
Well, as an organization, we've got the financial wherewithal with over $29 billion in revenue just announced in our last annual report and $10 billion EBITDA from an Australian dollar perspective. So we're financially stable, but more importantly, and you kind of touched on security and data sovereignty. From a GRC or governance, risk, and compliance perspective, the question that you should be asking your customers is, what are you doing about GDPR, okay? GDPR. So GDPR is currently a directive in the EU, right? And this is where Brexit comes in as well. It's a directive in the EU, and in May of 2018, it will become a regulation. So every company will have to be compliant with GDPR, which is more significant than PCI. What that means is if any of your customers violate GDPR after May 2018, the penalty will be $20 million or 4% of their global revenue, whatever is greater. So that's a business concern that every business that you're talking to is going to have to deal with, whether in the EU or in the US. Anyone that trades with any business in the EU.
I do like that. Fear, uncertainty, desire. Eh? You paint a picture for your customers.
Opportunity, as Andrew says, opportunity.
Opportunity, complexity, and change. From a colo perspective, Andrew, Equinix, a lot of customers out there wouldn't have even heard of Equinix, right? Because you've come from serving the service providers. Yeah, you're helping service providers build networks. But now your model is getting out to those enterprise customers, those lower end enterprise, the SMB customers. What sort of questions should the sales partners be asking to find opportunity that meets your capability?
Whatever you do, don't ask them if they know Equinix. It's the world's best kept secret. We've spent $13 billion since 1998 in investments, ploughing that into the ground, building stuff, acquiring stuff. The things that you need to be asking customers, and we'll make this very simple for you, is what are you doing about managing your business properly? I don't mean properly in a nasty way. I mean, how are you going to focus on delivering value to your customers when you're still managing servers where there's cloud, when you're still looking after your own network kit, when there's network service providers? We mentioned this earlier, network is going to be key. Going into a carrier-neutral location will save 70% of your networking costs because it's space, power and cooling, it's a piece of fiber, and it's managed. And then you have a selection of service providers to back that off. That is not an expensive question to ask. That's what are you going to do with that 70% saving?
Yeah, and I like that. And the days have changed for you guys. You essentially used to provide colo, you'd have carriers coming in your building, you give your customers a list, and it's very different now, right?
It is, and that was the heritage. There was nowhere that customers could go to connect to the internet. So we bought the internet into a carrier-neutral center. Then the content people like Akamai said, we need the network. Let's get on top of that. And all of a sudden, there's a propensity to buy high-speed circuits, etc. So financial institutions, they came to us. Then cloud service providers. Now the wider enterprise. It's been a wonderful journey, and I've only been on it for 4 years.
A wonderful journey, a journey we're 6 months into in the UK. But with these guys and you guys out there, speaking to your customers, I think some fantastic opportunity ahead. Guys, thanks for joining me on the stage today. Give them a big hand.